Winter warfare, the historic Snowball fight of Cole Harbour. Imagine a snowy day at school, kids laughing and students throwing snowballs. Sounds fun, right? But on January 9th, 1989, this innocent fight turned into chaos at Cole Harbour District High School. So let's set the scene. Kids throwing snowballs at each other when all of a sudden kids start taking things personally. Snowballs are flying. And so are the words. The laughing is gone and replaced with shouting. It's not long before the situation escalates into a full-blown fight. Teachers trying to stop the fight, but the scene is crazy. News outlets like CBC hear about the drama, and next thing you know, the story is huge. Everyone is talking about the students, parents, and even people across the country are starting conversations about what happened. Like, was there something the school could have done to prevent this? Snowball fight started a discussion across the country about race and bullying, the need for more understanding in the schools. It's something that they will not soon forget. Jermaine Downey was a student during the fight. Because of his experience, he decided to dedicate his life to helping others resolve cross-cultural conflicts. This event in history also inspired a movie called Across the Line, created by Floyd Kane. Across the Line is a film based on real events from the late 80s race riots in Preston, Nova Scotia. The film shows social issues related to racial tension, directed by Julian Christian Lutz, Director X. We're going to look into the Cole Harbour event, why it's important, and how it showed bigger issues and unfair treatment in the community. How an innocent snowball fight turned into a fight for equality. Racial issues in Canada. Let's unpack Canada's historical slavery. Let's take it all the way back. Canada's history of slavery. Did you know that Canada had its own version of slavery even before the Europeans came? Indigenous groups sometimes took prisoners from battles and made them slaves. But when Europeans showed up, they brought a whole new level of cruelty with them. Picture this. Many Europeans saw enslaved people, not as human beings but as property like furniture or animals. This type of slavery was known as chattel slavery. It was horrible and dehumanizing. The idea that they had was that white people were superior and that allowed them to treat indigenous and African people in horrific ways. Now let's talk about the impact of the slave trade. It caused pain and suffering for millions of people and left behind a legacy of negative stereotypes and ideas about different races. Some of these old ideas still are around in Canada today, even though slavery was officially abolished almost 200 years ago. After that background on racism, let's get back on track. Welcome to Cole Harbour District High School. Let's go inside. A public high school in the Forest Hills area of Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia. A place filled with students from all different areas coming together to learn. We can see how this can be a problem, right? Things weren't as smooth as they seemed at the school. Not a surprise. Inside the school, it was like a mini version of the world outside. Black students felt like outsiders, going through unfair treatment that made them angry. As time passes and the unfair treatment continued, the feelings of being excluded and anger built up. Instead of laughing and making friends, lots of the students were walking around with anger. This was the real reason why the fight started. So what did we get from this? What happened at Cole Harbour was because of the bigger issues in the community, racism and hate. A simple snowball fight like the ones we have all took part in should never have turned into a violent fight between black and white students. Students at the school felt like they were not safe. The situation got out of control. It shocked everyone, and it made people realize that there were problems at the school that needed to be dealt with. What started as a fun snowball fight ended like that. Crazy. There was a lot more to talk about. Krista Weber was a student during the event. She told CBC Friend it was so violent, said Krista Weber, a grade 10 student from Cole Harbour who saw the fighting start. Krista Weber's story. What did you see that day in 1989? My perception of that day may not be what everyone else is, but my best recollection is the snowball engagement that happened between two parties on the school grounds. I noticed that snowballs would come from the street side to the school side area, and it didn't take very long for that engagement to no longer be innocent, and the groups came together in the center and exchanged some words. Laughing turned to insults, then violence, because I felt like throwing the snowballs back and forth. Anybody in the vicinity was giggling about it, and then I remember quite a large snowball hitting the brick wall above the gentlemen that were standing at the school, and that snowball sort of exploded, dropping all of the fragments onto whoever was standing there. Then it turned from laughing to insulting. Now you've just made me look like a jerk. I guess those are my words. Someone else might word it differently, but I think if anyone was there that day and paying any mind, they would have seen it the same way. The individuals who felt slighted at the side of the school came toward the individuals who were throwing that particular snowball. Remember, both were engaged, freely throwing back and forth, and they met in the center. There were names being called, cussing, but I don't recall any racist names at that time. There wasn't any names alluding to the color of each group. And then there began some shoving, and I can't remember who shoved who first. It was extremely violent. I was 15 years old at the time. I didn't live my life in a bubble, but that was pretty shocking to watch because it was so violent. Someone got smashed in the face and their face split open. And if someone fell to the ground, there was kicking when someone was on the ground. There were things like that that I had not seen before. We might have had 7 separate communities bust into that school. It was a melting pot for different ethnic backgrounds and different races. I had friends from each community. Once the fight dissipated, the school tried to get back to normal. There were incidents where if I stood with a predominantly black group, I'd be faced with a white friend later saying, "You going to talk to them?" I was almost ashamed. I couldn't believe my friends said that to me. So it was always a challenge. Felt confident in how I engaged with people up until that point. Then I always felt like people were looking at me. Even some of my previous black friends would look at me differently. Like, has Krista changed? It was hard. It was challenging. It was really sad. And the minute someone had a disagreement or even just an average classroom debate about a theory, if one person was black and one was white, we were all on pins and needles. We were just waiting for race cards to start being thrown around or for someone to drop a derogatory name. It was almost like that cloud was imposed upon us after the fight. Krista Weber was in grade Bs, 10 at Cole Harbour District High School at the time of the fights. Robert Short, CBC. The Jermaine Downey story, CBC News. What do I remember about the day of the fights? That was a very interesting day. I remember hearing that there was a snowball being thrown, and that's how it escalated from a snowball. And then there were some guys that got into a fight. Some black guys, some white guys, and it just escalated from there. You feel kind of in the middle because you've made friends with people from both communities. I know for me it was a time where I was in grade 10 and I was making friends from both communities. It was a new experience for me, right? And you kind of feel caught in the middle. You're making new friends and you've got friends from home. And then you're kind of stuck between this whole, you got the loyalty question coming aboard, right? And it was a very difficult time. So I spent a lot of time in the library. I was an avoider of conflict. At the time, that was my conflict style, and my conflict style was to avoid conflict. So I spent a lot of my time in the library when these things were going on to avoid being involved because I had friends from the white community. I had friends from the black community. And to avoid that, I spent a lot of time alone. I remember eating my lunches sometimes in the woods by myself because I didn't want to be involved in the fights. Jermaine Downey, CBC News. Corey Beals story, CBC News. Corey Beals is a district chief with Halifax Regional Fire and Emergency. He grew up in North Preston, NS, and was a grade 12 student at Cole Harbour District High School. In 1989, the year a snowball fight turned into brawls between black and white students. I didn't see the actual throwing of the snowball. I was within the midst of the incident in terms of the large crowd that congregated as a result of that. What I can tell you is there was a clear divide in terms of the lines of communities. So you would have on one side of the crowd students from the predominant Preston areas, North, East Preston, Cherrybrook, Lake Loon. And then you'd have students on the other side, who were predominantly from the Eastern Passage area. The Preston area is historically an indigenous black community, African Nova Scotian community. And the Eastern Passage area predominantly is a white Caucasian community. So it was a line divided by cultural background, African Nova Scotian and white. I would say it escalated into a racial incident. Whether or not it originated as a racial incident is to be debated. For me, it was an incident where you had a group of white students throwing snowballs within a circle of black students, and regardless of race. If any group of students were to engage in that type of activity, there's going to be retaliation, whether it's white or black or any other type of cultural background. What eventually ended up happening was the incident turned into a racial incident It went from a group of white students and black students having an issue because of a snowball incident and escalated into a community incident. The roots of it. The communities have always historically been divided and isolated. When you have separation or isolation of that nature, students don't have the opportunity to interact. There's little inclusion. There's little engagement outside of your own cultural comfort zone. So for me, one of the key components or issues of this situation was because of a lack of interaction. You bring two strongly knitted communities, close-knitted communities, very strong culturally based communities together who have little knowledge of each other, and because of history, you're going to inevitably have issues. And unfortunately, in this situation, it escalated into a major issue, not just for the communities, but for the school board as well. And there were also underlying issues of the school board, not addressing issues such as the lack of diversity within the school system, the lack of educators reflecting the diversity within the community. Corey Beals, CBC News. Aftermath. After the fight, things got messy. People were hurt, and the students didn't feel safe because of the fight. The school was put in the hot seat because the way they handled the situation. They also did not deal with the racial issues that caused the violence in the first place. A student joins the conversation. "They just don't like each other," said grade 10 student Jeff Stevens. "The white people think the black people are poor and all that stuff. The black people think the whites are snobs. There's just no intermixing at all." Jeff Stevens, "We have to talk about racism," pleaded one father, Primrose James, from the all-black community of Preston. "Racism is alive and well, and it's a monster." Bruce Johnston of East Preston agreed. "You have white faces and black faces together, but integration is superficial. You have done nothing to bring white and black together." Cause and consequence. Cole Harbour snowball fight didn't just happen out of nowhere. It was caused by racism and unfair treatment that some kids were facing in the community. Black students were being bullied because of the color of their skin. This made them angry, as it would anyone. When the snowball fight started, all the anger and frustration that the black students had built up came out. What should have been a fun snowball fight turned into a big fight between black and white students because of all the built-up anger. The consequences of this fight were serious. It shocked everyone in the school and the community. The fight escalated into riots, making people realize that there were real issues of racism and bullying that needed to be addressed. It showed that what was happening outside of school was affecting the kids inside the school. After the fight, many people started to work together to make things better. Teachers and school leaders recognized that they needed to talk about racism and bullying. They began to create programs to help students understand each other better and to promote kindness and respect. The fight was a turning point for the community, making people see the need for change, especially how people treated each other. It made everyone come together and find ways to support all the students so that everyone could feel safe and included at school. Continuity and change. After the riots, people knew that things needed to change. The school realized they had to do better to make sure all students felt safe and included. They started offering diversity training for students and teachers. This training helped everyone understand and respect each other. They changed their policies. Cole Harbour introduced an updated provincial school code of conduct policy. They wanted to make sure that all kids felt like they were welcome and safe. These are some of the programs and initiatives. Revised code of conduct. That included a new policy that gives guidance on managing unacceptable behaviors at different grade levels and age-appropriate consequences. Black Learners Advisory Committee, Black. This group was formed in 1990 to study and raise awareness about the unfair treatment of African Nova Scotian students in education. Hiring of cross-cultural understanding coordinators and support workers. The Black Report resulted in schools hiring these workers to help support black students. Council on African Canadian Education, CAS. CASE was set up in 1996 and officially started in 1998. It is a provincial organization that helps support African Nova Scotian students in education, anti-racism courses. Some school boards, like the Halifax Regional School Board, started offering anti-racism courses to help reduce racial issues. Increased representation of minority teachers. The school boards also hired more minority teachers to address racial issues. The Canadian Race Relations Foundation, CRRF, strongly endorses the recent release of a new resource entitled social determinants and inequities in health for Black Canadian. Historical perspective. When we think about the Snowball fight, let's look at it from a historical point. This event teaches us about the struggles between different races in Canada. Many people went through unfair treatment because of the color of their skin. The Snowball fight was the moment that showed how these problems could end up causing problems in schools. Another issue was there wasn't much support for students who were treated badly. There just wasn't enough help available. There were not enough counselors or programs. Cole Harbour is a lesson for everyone. Be respectful and nice to people. Racism can spread, so don't spread it. Call to action. The Cole Harbour incident is a reminder of how important it is to deal with racism in our schools and in our communities today. Like the students in 1989 wanted their voices heard, we must also speak up for change. We need to have conversations about racism and unfair treatment so that everyone feels safe and feels included. Movements like Black Lives Matter show us that the fight against injustice is still here and we can't just ignore it. We can have discussions, workshops, and events that focus on understanding each other. Take action.